Hey there, you me DC fans, and welcome if you are new. I am the stepson of Krypton,
And I Mantis.
and today we are talking about comic book accuracy. Is it important? And if so, why? Okay, guys, so in previous videos here, we've been talking a little bit more and more about the characters in these new movies and TV shows being more comic book accurate. Now, when we say comic book accuracy, we're talking about overall the generality of the character throughout the comics, especially when we deal with characters like Superman and Batman that have existed in comics since the late 30s. And so that kind of like the overarching ideology of the character and how they're supposed to look, right? Not that, oh well, 2 years ago they made him in the comic. I don't give a shit about that. Talking about how the character is supposed to look. Mantis, what are your thoughts on keeping things comic book accurate? Is it vitally important, or are you okay if they change it and they take liberties?
I may be playing. We may disagree on this one, quite frankly.
Let's do it.
Um,
I like
be,
disagreement.
bec- because for certain things, yes, and I guess what I mean, like certain characters, again, certain properties, certain um movies, adaptations, as you will, like this is no secret again. I mean, it's not a comic book technically, but like I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and we did a reaction to the first episode of the Amazon show Rings of Power. That I know you haven't watched any of the rest of it. I did, and it is they change. They're very liberal in their story writing. Let's just say in the adaptation of some of those stories, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Um, but what's funny is in the Lord of the Rings trilogy that I would argue is the greatest three films ever, probably, well, maybe not ever made, but probably definitely within the last 30 years. uh they definitely changed things. They had to. They changed several things from the way it was written in the book. uh but it didn't take away from the greatness of the film or the entertainment value. um and I agree with your point that we're talking specifically with comic books and technically Lord of the Rings too, but comic books specifically like Superman and Batman. These are characters that were created, in the 30s and 40s and whatnot. And it's like you can't you can't discount 80 or 90 years of lore because 2 weeks ago, well, Batman decided that since Catwoman is gone now, that he decided to go to the pet store and buy a pet cat, and now he takes his pet cat out on his crime fighting adventures with him. So now in the next movie or show he's going to have a pet cat. What the no, no, that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard because it was in one episode of a comic issue of June of last year. Like, no, that's not a thing. So I completely agree with you there.
So lots to unpack there. Steering a little away from the Lord of the Rings analogy, because Mantis, when I was a kid, I read the original Hobbit book, and then of course I do love the original trilogy there. But I'm not as big of a fan of Lord of the Rings. Don't hate me for it in the comments there. But um, I am a fan of obviously comic books in general, and especially the superheroes. Obviously, Superman, Batman, being some of my favorites. Booster Gold, who we just did a video on.
Mm-hmm.
Still, they have not confirmed that Kumail Nanjiani not going to work here anymore.
Naga, not gonna work here anymore anyway.
Whatever his last name is not Booster Gold yet. That was just a speculation by the Blue Beetle actor that we have
Update,
still not
update,
gotten a name.
update.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Um,
Update.
so but them completely changing out the way that character looked from the comics, and we talked about it. As much as I do love Booster, he's not a in this bigger universe. He is not going to be some main character in this. So they're obviously going to focus on the powerhouses: the Batman, Superman, Wonder
Mm-hmm.
Woman, Green Lantern, all that kind of stuff. So if they want to, it kind of goes back to the previous video we just did. If they're getting the right actor for the right part, right? If the reason they're doing this is because they think he's going to do a great job because of special characteristics he has and talent he has, bring to it, but just because you want to race swap or gender swap out a character, no, that's not okay with me when we're talking about staying comic book accurate, right? And I feel like when we look at, okay, we've mentioned it in several videos here recently, but obviously it's one of the biggest, newest things out right now, Deadpool and Wolverine. What did everybody like and hate, right? What we hated was the old shitty leather in the original X-Men, that actually like the
Ugh,
first X-Men movie that they were in.
it was
Um, those suits look terrible, but it didn't really matter. The movie was still great. But they've
mhm,
gone through a long string of just kind of just weird looking suits with the X-Men, right? We never got to see Wolverine in the yellow and blue, and we
mhm.
finally got to. And fans absolutely loved it. And seeing him actually have the mask on, they loved it. Just like Deadpool, we love Deadpool right now. We did not like the X-Men Origins movie, the X Origins with Deadpool and Wolverine in there, where his mouth was gone and he had every power under the sun. That's not
Yeah, that's
Deadpool.
not a thing. Yeah.
You know, that's where comic book accuracy I feel like really comes into play, right? Is your main characters, Wolverine's obviously been always a big character in the comics. Hugh Jackman made it a really big thing too for everybody who was not savvy with comics. Um, they want to see comic book accurate with the main characters and the ones they love.
So my question is then for you, does it matter if it's clearly if it's a main character, it matters, but what if it's just some secondary character?
I still feel like with secondary characters, again, if you're changing them up from what they look like and what they should be in the comics, because that the actor or actress that you got for the character or that you envision for the character is going to be the best for the role, I'm okay with that, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like again when we look at and kind of going back that when after Henry Cavill had said he was not playing Superman anymore, there was talks of making Black Superman, and everyone is Michael B. Jordan. Why?
It's
Give
always
me
Michael B. Jordan.
one right. Give
It
me
is.
one fucking reason you feel like Michael B. Jordan should be the Man of Steel, other than he was super popular at that. I mean, he still is, but I mean, at that time he was on fire, ironically him being the Human Torch, where he was not on fire
Mm.
in that movie. But like he was super popular, but oh my god, like he's the one black guy that we gotta have to play everything. No, he would not be right for the Man of Steel. I'm sorry. So again, that's where I have. But if it's like who's gonna play Adam, you know, I he stays miniaturized most of the time, right? Like, a good chunk of that, like things like that again. Because when we think about this universe that we're gonna have here, it's that they're probably not going to have that much screen time in whether it be shows or movies, right? So the characters that are going to have screen time, I want them to be comic book accurate. The characters that aren't, and like I said with Booster, I don't think Kumel's the best for it, but I think the other two people that we had said are probably in other, or at least James Gunn might have ideas for them in other roles. So maybe he's like the next best that that James Gunn could think of. But I, that's not a hill I'm going to die on, right? I'm not going to just say I'm not going to watch anything in the DCU because they made Booster Gold Kamel.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
again, and just
Kamel
because
Booster
this
Gold.
happened a little while ago when The Rock was, because you said Adam, it kind of reminded me of like Black Adam. Uh, like the original Black Adam was, I mean, he was not a black dude, or Samoan if you want to get technical with it.
What's the nigga gonna do? He's Samoan.
With The Rock, right? Like, or Dwayne Johnson, like that's. But no, I mean like that. Well, I didn't care. Like that's not it. Like I wasn't thinking like, oh my gosh, they didn't cast him right. He's not supposed to be black. Like no, like I, and mainly because I didn't really know much about the character. Like it's not like, and that's I guess where it's very subjective. You know, well, to me, Black Adam is not that very popular. Like I don't really know, but I'm sure there's someone out there that has their whole rooms decorated in Black Adam shit. like the original stuff. They've known the character for a long time, and maybe it pissed them off like royally whenever The Rock, did that movie. Um, but like I guess to me, like I don't care. Like who cares? Like I don't know. you know, I think that's what I'm saying. Like it's kind of subjective based on most of your quote unquote not as popular characters. Now your main ones, again, like we're gonna stick with DC here, but like Batman, Superman, like I feel like you need to be pretty dang close because people are very familiar with those characters. They're very familiar, specifically like because I know you talked about Batman and we've talked about Ben Affleck and Christian Bale and Michael Keaton playing those characters, and they all kind of played different versions of Batman. So there's because the character's been out forever, so there's different iterations of the character, and they each have their own little thing and whatnot. So I think it just depends on which one you're looking at too.
Well, it's funny, talk about Batman. Like, uh, obviously, when you look at Michael Keaton, he seems like he would almost play a better Joker than Batman in some ways because, like, I remember him in the way he kind of acts in Batman in the first one, like when he's like, "You want to get nuts?
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts."
All I think of is Beetlejuice, man. He seemed
That's
like
exactly what I was gonna
Beetlejuice
say.
right there,
Yeah.
So it was hard to kind of picture him as being the Dark Knight, as like I just thought him as kind of Beetlejuice. He kind of went a little crazy and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it still worked. I still love the Michael Keaton Batman. But then, obviously, when you go into the Val Kilmer and then George Clooney and stuff, I'm like, okay, we're straying further and further away. And Christian Bale, yeah, I get he got into good shape, but he wasn't in like Batfleck shape, right? He wasn't in Ben Affleck's shape of Batman. And
Well, I'm not gonna. Let me just point out, like in my opinion, the reason those films are great is not because of Christian Bale's Batman. Like the reason those movies are great is because of Christopher Nolan's ability to make really good movies.
absolutely, but I think part of it too is what we look at is okay when we think about Batman. Batman's like the Captain America of the DC world, whereas except he's not on Super Soldier formula, but the Super Soldier formula of Captain America really took him to the peak level of human fitness. Batman is basically there, drug free, right? Not to the level that Captain America is, obviously, but he is supposed to be peak level fitness, intelligence, all that stuff. Something that's like never actually achievable, but he's a comic book character. And I feel like we
Yeah.
saw the physicality portion with Batfleck, and we also got like the fight scenes because if you think about the warehouse fight scene,
Oh
is
yeah.
probably the best fight scene, and I know we've talked about it a couple times of any Batman. Versus when you watch, if you go back and actually watch Batman Begins, when Batman first does his first fight scene, there's a lot of cape flipping and stuff. You don't actually see combat, like you don't see a whole lot. He just kind of takes
Mm-hmm.
these six guys down, but you didn't get to see the fight scenes. And one of the articles I'd read, it says fans want James Gunn to make Batman more like the comics, where he is more of a physical presence, where we see his almost like superhuman physicality versus what we've kind of seen in the past, other than Batfleck.
I want it to be like I'm playing Arkham, the game, and like I'm chaining combo. Like you should be chaining combos to bad guys. Like that's what I want to see. You know what I mean? Like I agree with you because like in Batman Begins, like the when you first see him and when he breaks up that meeting between Crane and he's trying to sell drugs or whatever, and the quote unquote the other bad guys come in and or not bad guys, the other Batmen that aren't actually Batman. Obviously, you find that
You're
out,
thinking about the
and they're
Dark Knight. You said Batman Begins.
oh sorry, I mean the Dark Knight. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. And he's there's really not even that many fight punches and stuff in there either. He does. I like how they kind of bring in the gadgets a little bit more in there too. I mean, they did it throughout the whole series, but it's not necessarily. You got to see more there than you did when he was just nabbing people in Batman Begins, but it's still not to the degree you saw him in basically in really good lighting in Ben Affleck's version in the warehouse fight, where there wasn't holding back anything against those guys. He was If they died, he dies, right? Like,
If he dies, he dies.
like he was playing Drago. Like,
The thing is, like, and several of them did, because
yeah,
like the thing is, what I love is it broke the trope of what a lot of movies do, and fight movies and action movies do, is that you're surrounded by bad guys, but they attack you one at a time. It's like, oh, let me deal with this
yeah,
guy and then this guy. He was dealing with 3 and 4 attackers at some points in time, especially when they had him on the ground. He's blocking with feet and hands, and I love
yeah,
that, right? Because that's a Batman. Again, that's an Arkham thing, right? You're literally fighting, against, you're surrounded. Even though Arkham is more combo-y, and I don't know that you actually fight like 3 people at the same time in Arkham, but still closer representation than I think any other movie's gotten us. So I feel like that is, again, fan, and the article had stated, fans were saying that they want that Batman that's more comic book accurate. I feel like fans are starting to say, hey, look, you know like your diehard fans, the ones that are sticking through you through all this bullshit that both MCU and the DCEU/DCU are going through, like, we want to be rewarded with something that reminds us of the source material, right? It's kind of like you talk about Lord of the Rings, right? You want to be rewarded with a show that sticks to the lore and the source material that and that made you fall in love with this. And I think another prime example of that is Game of Thrones, right? Now, I've not read the books. I didn't start watching Game of Thrones until the 7th season was over, and then in between the 7th and 8th season, since there's like 2 fucking years, I binge watched the whole show like 2 or 3 times. But I binge watched it, fell in love with it. But I know a lot of people were saying, obviously the seasons are based off of the books or whatever, and then the 8th season didn't have a book to go off of, and then it just went to shit. You know, and it did, like, it's kind of like what we talked about, the Star Wars thing is like, it almost seemed like it was 2 completely different movies or shows or something, because it was like, wow, you did all this to develop this character of Daenerys that was trying to free and free Westeros and do all this other stuff, and season 8, bam, villain. Just a quick turnaround villain.
yeah. There was. I'll just say that the showrunners took a lot of liberty, even along with George R. R. Martin. Like, he was in all of that. Like, I mean, even though he didn't write the last couple bits there, like, he was pretty much with them through all of that, kind of helping them along. They still took liberties with a lot of it as well. Like, it just, in my opinion, I mean, I agree with you. Like, it got, I mean, I don't know. Like, after 4 or 5, it just seemed to kind of get into that, like, maybe we shouldn't go any. In my opinion, it's like, we need to wrap this shit up here, like, soon, because it's gonna be bad if we keep going. It's dragging on. The seasons, people are gonna get upset about certain things. Like, I yes, and it's kind of the same, like you said. I mean, you got, if you stick to the source material, you're gonna have more people that you're going to attract to whatever it is, because you're not going to alienate them. And the people that don't care, well, they don't know any different. Like, they're not going to, oh, you stuck to the source material, well, I don't like that. Who's what? Who is? No one's going to say that. I mean, unless it's a bad show. I mean, again, like, I've said this before, just because it's comic book accurate doesn't mean it's good. Like, there's been shit comic books, or shit episodes of comics, like we've talked about before. A lot of them seem to be in the last 5 or 6 years, but that tends to happen. So, for the most part, I agree with you. I guess my final thoughts here is, if you stick to the comic book accuracy of what the source material is, whatever it is, you have a better chance at making the audience happy. They want to come see whatever it is, whatever you're doing. There's less bitching. And for the most part, especially with a lot of these things that have been out forever, that's why people want to come see it, because they're reminiscing, right?
Yeah, and I think we talked about that when we did a recent video we just did about the Batman-less Cape Crusader, because you changed up a character, and uh, like, why? Like, give me the reason why you did that, because I don't see a good one, right? So you went off of the comic books, and you went and did your own thing, and you made the character worse, and for no seemingly legitimate reason. It's kind of like you go off of you go away from the source material, and it's not like you came up with some new creative thing that's like a new modern touch. You just made it shit. And like there's no reason as to why. I'm okay if you want to take some liberties with, again, if we're talking about the actors themselves, you know, maybe this person doesn't fit to the T of what the comic books is, but there's like almost nobody else you can imagine for the role. Like they would fit into that role perfectly. Now, typically, usually those are because they seem to fit the overall character profile. Like Patrick Stewart as Professor X. I think whenever we heard an X-Men movie being announced back in 2000, they were like, "Dude, it's got to be Patrick Stewart." But like based off of what you know of the character, like, okay, yes, this person, they aren't exactly comic book accurate, but I feel like there's nobody else better to play the role. Then I'm okay with you making the change. But when you make these dramatic gender and race swapped characters on the bigger characters, you're not doing it for that reason. There's only one reason why you're doing it, right? And there's where I have a problem. Is it needs to be the right person for the right part. That's my final thoughts. So, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and try to keep this one a little bit shorter. If you have made it with us this far, we definitely do appreciate it. Consider giving this video a like. He is going to show you where. Touche. Subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out, because we got plenty more content. We've been up in our release schedule to 2 to 3 times a week here, so we're working our asses off for you guys, because we do appreciate every one of you who are watching our videos and who are subscribed, both newest and people who have been with us since the beginning. But let us know down in the comments, how do you feel? Is comic book accuracy, like, is that a sticking point for you? Is it, if it's just your favorite character that you want to be comic book accurate? I kind of feel like we're all guilty of that. Or is it that, yeah, maybe some of the side characters you're not as worried about? Let us know how you feel about it, because I'd be kind of curious to see if it's just us being insane or not, because we never ruled that out at this channel.
It's possible.
Yes, we have not been fully tested. We may be insane. So, Mantis, you got anything else?
No. I think that wraps it up for me.
All right, and that's going to wrap it up. That's going to wrap it up here for us at You, Me, and DC. So until the next one, we will see you then.
Later.